Yep, just clock that. Just clock that. All right. Everyone can see my screen okay?
Perfect.
Yep. Yep.
Today's agenda, we'll cover first 10 minutes, usual business. So review the previous minutes and some work group updates. And then we're going to get into a few different core projects. So the proposal for composition presented by Heath, the proposals for diagnostic report presented by Corey, and the proposal for document reference presented again by Heath. And then I'll touch on some next meeting pieces. Okay, usual business. So first, the previous minutes. I think this actually links out to the incorrect one.
Yes, that does look suspiciously like today's minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that link is incorrect. We'll fix that on the
I've put
minutes for
the
the,
correct link in the chat for you.
thank you. So these are the minutes. Are there any
Hang
issues?
on, that's patient summary.
Gosh, that is.
It must be the other. Yeah, that'd be the right one.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's the one.
Are there any questions or issues with the notes from the previous meeting?
Could you just scroll down a bit just to confirm for people that we have? Yeah, exactly. So we've got attendees, we have the recording, we've got the slides, we've got all the decisions kind of made. So yeah, that looks complete. So, yep, okay. So I'm happy to motion approval of the minutes of our last call.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I can second Landon Riley.
All right. Thank you, Landon. Launch this. Should be a poll for close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 24 responded, 13 affirmatives, 11 abstains, and no negatives. So the motion passes. The next usual business, AU Core R3 Inferno Test Kit, PSS approved by the Fire Work Group.
I might give the quick
Yeah, thank you,
update, I guess,
Daniel.
on the TSC. So or Michael Wilson, if you wanted to, you could, because you're the AU Cook co-chair.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm happy to do it.
all right, cool, go for it.
Yeah, so last week, the 23rd of April, we had the first meeting, the HL7 Australia Technical Steering Committee. So I am the AU Core representative on that. So I can take anything from AU Core to that. I can also bring back, like I am now, just reporting back on anything that happens in that meeting. So this was the first meeting. It's being chaired by Tim Blake. So it was a good first meeting just to sort of get a feel for who's on there, what we need to do. So the TSC is the sort of second line approval that sits underneath the board. So a lot of the things that used to go through the fire work group for approval would go through the technical steering committee as it's established. We basically decided in the TSC in this first meeting that we're going to go through and review all of the existing process documents that we have for HL7 Australia. So they're all the things to do with project proposals, project scope statements, and the like. There's that, and then the decision-making practices and a number of those documents. So we've got all these existing processes that we have been following. The TSC is going to review those and then just endorse them to make sure they're fit for purpose moving forward. And they're going to be prioritized based on need. So we're going to go through the list, work out the priority of what needs to go first, and work through those incrementally. Looking at the operational target for the TSC, cutting in is the 1st of June. But we'll continue to use existing processes with via work group until we're operationalized in the TSC to accept all of those. I did also raise that AU Core has our work group has approved a new mission and charter. So once the TSC is ready, we'll take that there. Also noting that we would need the processes for the notice of intent to ballot, given that we'll have a ballot for R3 coming up. So that were the main AU Core things I took along to that first meeting. TSC is going to be meeting fortnightly moving forward. And so we'll have that sort of cadence to take things and progress the development of the TSC. I don't know, Danielle, did you have anything else you wanted to mention about what went on?
No, I mean, I think those are the important points. So no, there's nothing I would like to add.
Great.
Great. Then a reminder that for the next fire work group, there are items affecting AU Core. That next fire work group is next Wednesday, the 6th. Specifically, the items that are being discussed are support for NDIS number, patient NDIS registration status, patient PBS patient safety net identifier, and then guidance and extension items for prescriptions that do not currently impact AU Core for mandatory or must support elements.
I guess I'll add there that I suppose in terms of the identifiers, they kind of really only come in in two ways. They will get included in the background list of AU Core patient identifier because we derive from AU base. The prescription stuff, which is the thing in red, it's probably currently not expected to affect AU Core mandatory stuff, but it might. So that would be medication request profile for AU Core that we'll keep an eye out and sort of bring back to this group if it is looking like it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Moving on to action items. There are still 2 outstanding action items. Given time today being tight, I think we'll leave these to revisit them at the next core meeting, unless Michael, you have a
The second one has been scheduled, I think, for the next AU Core work group meeting. So on the 14th, I think. So.
Great. Thank you. Then as a reminder, there is a Sparked Community Co-Design Workshop the 27th and 28th of May in Brisbane. Please use the QR code to register for tickets, and hopefully we'll see everyone there.
Yeah, I got an update from Maddie yesterday. The technical day is sold out ahead of the clinical
Great.
day, which is like the first ever. However, if you see that, you can go on the waiting list. So if you can make it, you are interested, you can just email, I think it's sparked@csiro.au. We can pop that in the chat. It's probably on the Eventbrite anyway to go on the waiting list. And also, I guess conversely, for people who find out that they have tickets but can't make it to the day, please let us know so that we can release things to the waiting list people.
Thanks, Danielle. And then another reminder is there is a Sparked testing event in Brisbane on 8th of July. Please join us to test your implementations. This testing event is for testing anything that implementers have done for AU Core, AU patient summary, AU e-requesting, smart forms, Health Connect, Australia, etc. Again, the focus is bringing something to this testing event that you have implemented to be able to test with others. as opposed to just more of our TDG days to talk about the different things. This is really focused on making sure we are testing with each other and testing our implementations against the specifications. All right. I think that is it for new business. We're going to move on to the Fire IG project. And then do IG project updates. So up first is AU core composition, and I'll hand that over to Heath.
Thank you.
So let me know if you need me to pull up anything or
I'll share. Just give
Okay,
me
great.
a brief moment to get screens in the right order. Okay, you can see that.
Yeah, we can see presenter view though.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Wrong view. Interesting. Screen 1 is screen 2 today.
Yeah, that looks right.
Okay, so AU core document reference. Sorry, this is the wrong one. So let me go back a bit. So this is AU core composition. So initially, I just want to review what our principles for inclusion in AU core are. I won't dwell on this. I have presented it in the last call. But basically, we have these principles. They, in a nutshell, we're talking about concepts that are in AU CDI in the current release or a past release, where there's high community interest, where we can go through the technical design group consensus process that needs to be updated to working group process, but we should update these principles for that change. Evaluate that the meaning principle that the concept is meeting the principles for inclusion in AU core, and that it's actually in scope of AU core. I think that's what that intended, and also that it's supported by other IGs around the world, such as US Core, IPS, and this is really around that there's some prior art for this particular resource. The distinction between definitely in scope and maybe is whether there is one or the other of a UCDI release versus high interest community interest. When there's both, then it's a definite in scope. When it's otherwise, it's a maybe when there's one or the other. The key thing really is that third one, which is about the time that it takes for us to get consensus for a particular release. Okay, so AU core composition has gone through a few steps already. We've had 2 information sessions on the 27th and 31st of March. We've also had 2 calls in AU core on the 2nd and 16th of April. Just a reference to the information session page that's on the wiki there. If you want to look at some of the sessions that we're talking about, how we got to this proposal. And also there is a vendor support page there as well, which I would encourage people to that have implemented the composition resource to actually go and fill that out so that we've got some background around what people have implemented to sort of satisfy our proposal to some extent. So there's really 3 sections there. It doesn't take too much. Just go through, add your system into the line. Basically, what are the elements that you support? and also for certain elements that are coded, what coding systems you use or specific codes you use, and also what types that you use for certain elements, such as do you use patient only or do you do patient in group? For authors, do you use practitioner or practitioner role? And also for the attester. So there's also an information one here about a comparison against other IGs in here, including AU patient summary, IPS, and via clinical document profiles with the links to those various profiles there. So please check that out and add your system. We have already gone through what the scope of the profile is, and I won't go into this too much detail, but we're focusing on minimums expectations for using the composition resource for the purposes of clinical documents for a subject of care within Australia. And the key items there is that we are talking about clinical documents or structured clinical documents in the context of a patient. We have also already agreed in previous sessions around the mandatory elements, the must support elements, the reference types for subject, author, and attester party. And we have also agreed on the obligations for AU core, responder, and requester. They were all minuted in the last minutes of the two sessions that this has been talked about. So next we're up to bindings. We also agreed on these. So what we've agreed is that we will retain the existing binding as defined in VIA, but we will create a new AU VIA document types code that will contain one element for this point in time of patient summary, given it's the only one that is defined by AU IGs, and we will attach that as an additional binding of type or of purpose candidate, so that we are alluding to the fact that we are wanting you to leverage this particular value set in the context of Australia, but not mandating that at this point in time within the profile. Any questions thus far? Great. So moving on now, so there's two items that I'd like to get through. One, which is basically what our capability statement changes are as a result of including the composition resource, and search parameters, which is also part of the capability statement. So basically what I'm proposing here is that we effectively adopt the current patterns that we use for all other resource types within AU Core. So that being, composition the resource will be added to both the responder and requester capability statements, and with the following, that the resource conformance will be should, that the base system profile will be AU Core composition, and that the profile conformance will be shall, and the interaction summary will basically have a shall support read and search if you support the resource, the composition resource. So that should at the top is the overarching thing. You should support composition. That means that you don't have to, but if you do, then you shall use it as your base profile, and you shall support read and search type. I've put in what would be a pretty standard documentation description at the bottom, but that's really down to the editor's discretion around that one. So I would like to move that we effectively adopt the same pattern of including the AU Core composition profile into the AU Core capability statement for both responder and requester.
Thank you, Heath. Is there a second for that motion, or questions?
So no one wants composition in AU core.
I'm happy to second it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is that Jai?
It was.
Thank you, Jai. Okay, Heath, can you repeat the motion again, just so I can have the title correct?
So basically to include the composition resource into the AU core capability statement for both requester and responder, with the conformance requirements as specified on the slide using the AU core profile.
Okay, so the motion that is going to be voted on, as Heath just said, is including the composition profile into the capability statement for requester and reader.
Responder.
Responder, sorry. Requester and responder as documented on the slide. And Jai is seconded. Are there any, before we vote, are there any questions or clarifications? Okay, just figure out where my holy thing is. Where did it go? Okay.
I'm a +1 if that actually went up, or is that the results from the last one?
Sorry. What am I sharing?
Yeah, I think
I'm
what
sharing
you
the wrong
have to,
thing.
yeah, so
There we
there's an
go.
ellipse next
Yep.
to that. Yeah, yep, you've got
So
it.
this is a vote for the current motion. At 23 of 30, 24, 31. So close that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have 27 total votes, 21 affirmative, 6 abstain, and no negative. So that motion passes.
Is there any +1s? Everyone got to vote that can vote? Okay.
Click in the chat. I guess you can count me as a +1. I did not vote in the thing.
You can't vote.
Yeah, because you're chair. But we appreciate the moral support.
All right. Back to you, Heath. Just a quick time check. You have about 7 minutes left in this section.
Excellent. So moving on to the second part of the capability statement is to specify what the search parameters are that the conformance requirements state for both requester and responder. So what I'm proposing here is for AU core composition, or for the composition resource, that we will have a search parameter for patient as a shell, a combined parameter of patient plus type of shell, and a patient plus author as a should. So you can see on the right hand side what those parameters are looking at. So obviously the patient's pretty obvious. When the subject is of type patient, we've got the type down here, which is the kind of document which we are binding to that value set with the additional binding of for AU clinical documents. that has the code of patient summary initially. And the third one is the author, that is basically potentially any of those. So we can combine that with a patient to find a document that was authored by a particular entity
Okay.
of those
You have
types.
two questions for people with their hands raised.
Daniel?
Yeah, sorry, I was I was on mute. So I mean, I think patient type. So I think the two shells are fine. I think they're obvious. Patient plus author doesn't bother me. I think the only thing that's really interesting is whether or not we include something that supports a date range search. I really do think that is actually valuable, as at least a should. So that's kind of what I would be putting to the group who's on the call on whether we want to do that.
I guess I don't disagree. My only reservation around that is the definition of the date, which is basically the editing time of the composition. But as long as we understand that it is around the editing time of the document, which may not be the same as the actual clinical time that the document relates to. But I'm in favor of that amendment.
I mean, maybe we leave that as to a later point because what you've raised there is meaningful, and it's some of the things we've been talking about patient summary, that what we care about is like the event associated with the period for that, and that date doesn't do that. Um,
Correct. Yeah.
so this might be a thing we might have to just spend some more time on, but I really can't imagine that it's not useful to be able to filter on a set of dates.
I still think even just to limit the list of results down to the last 6 months or whatever,
Yeah,
the date might be useful, even though it's not clinically aligned.
maybe. Yeah.
But I think a should is probably about as strong as we can get. Marika,
Um, I agree with what Danielle's saying on a date being useful in some way, but doesn't have to be here. The question I thought was, I think that all of the combinations that you've raised are like meaningful and useful. I'm just wondering, because type is currently bound to a candidate value set, where it's not clear exactly what is supported and what a system may contain. Would it be more useful to have that as should, because it's another implement? I'm thinking from a shim and a facade, putting that hat on. Um, every time we have a code, then there's additional complexity implementing a token search for something like. It's a candidate value set. So yeah, just wondering if that should be a should rather than a shall. But apart from that, um, no questions.
Danielle?
I have thoughts on what Marie has said. I'm torn on that. Um, I mean the so the document site typeset is massive, and in some ways there's a relationship between how strongly we put together conformance requirements around search parameters and how confident we are that we've already like locked them down and got them right.
Mm.
And composition type, totally agree. That's going to take time. I, Phew. I mean, it needs to be at least a should. I would totally support a shall. That doesn't mean, of course, that I mean that would mean that if your system doesn't have that type, you're returning a response that says I don't have whatever your code you're sending me.
Mm.
Um, but I think it's going to be critical for all of what's been envisioned for the healthcare ecosystem around
Mm.
like record locator service and everything else. So I don't have a problem with this being shell now, and then we're like putting focus on building up the type value set to be useful. But I'm happy, like, I guess it's either way, whichever way the community wants to fall on that. But it is going to be a shell.
So my 2 cents worth from a requester perspective, I think we need to make sure that we've got something that the requester can use. And otherwise, without this being reliably available to a requester, that's putting an onus on the requester always to filter locally. So I agree with Danielle that if you don't know a document, then you respond with no documents. Sorry, if you don't know a document type, then you respond with no documents. I think that's a reasonable thing. And again, within the context of our candidate value set, what we're really interested in at the moment in Australia is to be able to search for documents that are patient summaries. And that is very useful to a consumer. Sorry, requester.
Thank you, Heath. I recognize we are at time for this section. Is there any closing motions or thoughts that you'd...
I would love to go to a motion. My quick comment to Michael was that period is not a must support element, so therefore we're not going to include it as a search parameter. So I would like to move that we include the search parameters as on the as displayed on the screen. So patient plus type as shall, patient plus author as should, and the additional one that was suggested, which is patient plus date as shall. That is my motion.
Okay, so the motion to make these search parameters as displayed plus the additional patient plus date as shall. Is there a
Should.
seconder? As should?
Should.
Patient plus date as should. Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Yes, I'll second Rob Eastwood.
Thank you, Rob. Any remaining clarifying questions or points? Okay. Okay, so in front of you is a vote for the current motion of adding these composition search parameters. "22 responses so far, so we'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My vote is not included. I am going to add a negative vote, but the totals are such that the affirmatives are 21 out of 27, 2 out of 27 for negative, and 4 out of 27 for abstain. So as such, the motion passes.
Do we want to ask the reason for the negative?
So I was one of the negatives, and it was for the shall versus should. It's just a note that that was my concern on patient plus type and the strength of that requirement, but that's the only objection that I have.
Okay,
Yep,
we'll
and
make sure that that's captured for the minutes because that's important.
Thanks,
taking
Danielle.
my co-chair hat or my chair hat off for a second, I agree with Marika, and that's why my negative vote, my vote was negative. Also,
even though it doesn't count.
I get the note taker, the AI note takers I kicked out will record it for posterity, and it'll show up in Claude or GPT in 5 years.
Excellent.
And there's another negative though. And what's the concern for that person? Because we really should be capturing these to make sure that we're aware of them.
One, I thought. No, there's only one negative.
Oh, sorry, I thought there was two. Okay, no, that's fine. Can I also then check with you and Marika if so really it seems to be the concern that we do not have a strongly agreed specific set of document codes for Australia, right? And so that is what I'm picking up from you guys that we would want to have in order to then support
Yep.
the patient plus type. Is that it? Is that the prereq?
I think that's the main prereq. I think I haven't entirely looked at what this would mean for our implementation, but I do have a secondary concern where there is a chance that there's not going to be a deterministic way of using codes to represent type, and it'll be a string, and that's the secondary concern, but that's quite specific to our implementation.
Oh, we could lock that down. It is true that composition type is codable concept, but we could vote to say that you must provide at least a code. You cannot provide text. That is something that we could, if we do agree as a community, we could include it.
I mean, that's completely reasonable, but then in our implementation, if we don't have a deterministic way of determining the code all of the time, we're going to be passing a bunch of like data absent reason unknowns, and then that becomes a little bit unuseful if we have a bunch of unknown codes but text that's, I mean, that's a separate.
This is sounding to me a bit like just, sorry, sideways because I'm project facilitator for AU Core. And just before we get to you, Brett, this is sounding like maybe we want to do a breakout at the upcoming Brisbane Connectathon and talk about what can we do, what's useful, what are some of the problems.
I think that would potentially be useful.
And keeping in mind,
Brett,
we've got a ballot that we go through as well, so all this feedback can potentially go through that.
Brett, we are close to time on this subject, so I'll let you go, and then we'll switch over to Diagnostic Report.
I'll be quick. Yeah, because I think at the moment we don't have many structured compositions to refer to that we would expect to exist. So I think there's a lot of leeway for service to do what they want around that stuff. And but I do get the point. Since we don't have we don't have an actual binding on that element in the core composition, it kind of leaves it very open to interpretation. But yeah. Anyway, I think it's still and this is always with fire stuff too, there's service choice in there. Servers do what they do and can not do stuff as well, in terms of that kind of content.
Great. Thank you, Brett. Now I'm going to move us on to the proposal for diagnostic report and hand it over to Corey.
Hey everyone, I'm Corey. I will be talking about diagnostic report along with Celeste, who is here. Celeste, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Yes, sorry, getting my screen ready. Hi everyone, I'm Celeste. I'm also from Epic. I work with standards for interoperability.
All right. So today what we're going to talk through is diagnostic report. We're going to go through some voting similar to what we were just doing with Heath, but just wanted to quickly reintroduce it. Do a really quick reintroduction of it, recompare to AU base, and then start getting into the important subjects that we want to make sure that we have as a part of it. So, yeah. So what are we talking about here? So this profile, scope, and purpose, the AU Diagnostic Report provides a minimum set of expectations for the exchange of diagnostic reports for subject of care within the Australian context. So really just making sure that we have some kind of coded report that can be that is usable and has the minimum set of elements that we need to be exchanged. And then second point is talking about what this profile is aiming to enable, and it's aiming to enable the discovery and exchange of diagnostic reports. And then talking about how these diagnostic reports may be structured with discrete data via observation resources or rendered as an attached document. So differentiating from document reference, where these are still coded and categorized and specific to a diagnostic report. This profile also supports linking diagnostic reports back to the originating service request, or that the diagnostic report was based off of. So that's what we're aiming to achieve as a part of this, and this is the overall high level. And so what do we need to do here? As a part of this group, there's a lot that we need to do, talking about must support elements, talking about obligations, some invariants that we're proposing, talking about the value set bindings and search parameters that we'll want to propose. There are some why we talked about in the information sessions, but these are really important for enabling exchange of results, diagnostic results, for radiology, for pathology, and for other things like genomics and specialty workflows. So it's also something that is recommended to have as a part of the IPS. And why now? A big reason is like the e-requesting spec was recently released, but there's also a lot of transitions to from HL7 to FHIR across laboratory information systems and radiology information systems. All right, let's get into it. So quick comparison to AU base, and we'll get into for our proposal, and we can get into what each of them are as we go through the voting blocks, but just trying to show a quick differential of like, what are we really talking about for element by element when we're talking about our proposal here. I will let this rest for a second, and feel free to raise your hand if you have questions.
So you're suggesting that based on is not must support?
For the purpose of our proposal, we are suggesting that based on is not must support.
So this is an overall view. I don't know if you've got the easy wins somewhere that we can just like vote on, but I
Yeah.
definitely have some stuff. I'm really
Thank you,
unconvinced that
Danielle.
identifier shouldn't be mandatory.
I think Corey
Um,
will go through these individual ones
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
and
go
break
ahead
it
and move
down from
forward
there.
with that.
Yeah, go for it.
So there's some easy ones that we're gonna, sorry, so
Yeah.
I can introduce this.
Yeah, so we have broken it down starting with kind of our easier wins. Block A here is kind of the core of the core. These are the elements that we thought were most important to be must support. And this block is really just focused on adding that must support flag. AU base doesn't have anything as must support. So first of all, like status, the status of the report. We'll get into bindings later on. Code, subject, and performer. Yeah.
If I was to make a motion, I would agree with almost everything here, except on the subject line, I think that has to be mandatory. For all the other AU Corp profiles, the reference to the patient is mandatory, and I think that it's important that we stick to that approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into cardinality on a separate slide as well. This is just
Oh,
saying it's going to be must support.
If this is pure must support, then I totally agree with that list.
Mhm.
Yeah, the cardinality we were trying to specifically exclude for subject from here, just in case like we're making it mandatory. So just we have it as a separate vote just for that piece, but this is for cardinal, like yeah, for everything else. This
Must support, yeah.
What about issued?
Issued we'll get into on a separate slide as well. This isn't a full list of everything we're changing, but these are kind of the high level, like these are the things we thought would be the least controversial to make must support.
These are the easy wins, ain't
Yeah,
it?
these are
Do you have a
the
problem?
easiest wins we
Okay,
had.
so you obviously have a complication around issued which I can't see. So okay, we'll wait to get to it.
Sorry, just to be clear, the status and code are cardinality inherited from base, or are they have they been changed from 0.1 to 1.1?
The cardinality is inherited.
Okay,
So
that's fine
yes,
then.
they are mandatory.
Base is in the third column there, Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so after those clarifications that this is just an initial proposal of 4 items to add must support for, is there any motions?
I mean, I'm happy to motion that we add must support to the 4 elements that are listed here. So status, code, subject, performer.
Okay. There's a motion to add must support to these 4 displayed elements. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Angus.
Thank you, Angus. So Danielle motioned, Angus seconded. I'm going to, are there any questions or discussions? I didn't realize I launched the poll. Okay, we have over 20 votes. I'm going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 25 total votes, 22 affirmative, 3 abstained, and 0 negative. The motion passes.
Amazing.
I'll give it back to Celeste and Corey for the next pieces.
Awesome. Yeah, moving on to block B, this is focused on updating our reference targets to AU core reference targets instead of AU base. So for subject, performer, result, and encounter, we'll update it to look at the AU core. Same essential concepts, just AU core instead of AU base. Based on is kind of the exception here, where we will retain the AU base target list. We thought it was comprehensive for this purpose, so.
AU base doesn't actually have AU base diagnostic requests listed as it, so it would be upgrading the AU base diagnostic to include AU base diagnostic requests as well.
Yeah, thank you, Corey.
It should based on reference the AU service request.
Yes. Is there one? I was looking at the quick artifact list for R2 and I wasn't seeing it.
There's some vaguely sneaky things happening here. In AU core, we don't change the references unless they're must support elements. We've not yet voted on these. So
Okay.
I'm not against these being must support elements, but if they aren't, we won't stick requirements on them because why would we impose requirements on things we don't expect people to support? So how do we want to handle that?
I was going to suggest we come back to this after we've done all our must supports, or we only approve the first 2, which we just agreed on.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we totally could already approve the first 2.
So
because
I'm happy to motion that we approve the first 2.
Heath is motioning to approve the reference targets for subject and performer based on the fact that they've already had their must support voted on. Do I have a second?
Brett here, I'll second.
Thank you, Brett. Any questions or points of clarification before I launch the poll? All right. So the motion to update the references for subject and performer is on the table for a vote. And we have 24 responses, so closing that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, for the motion to upgrade the reference targets for subject and performer on diagnostic report, we have 24 of 27 affirmative, 3 of 27 abstaining, and 0 of 27 for negative. So the motion passes. I'll hand it back to Corey and Celeste to start hopping around, I guess.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and move forward and maybe we'll come back to the last few later. Subject, came up earlier. We do propose to make it mandatory. I don't expect there to be much controversy with that. This is the patient.
Motion.
Yeah,
Do
thank
it.
you.
It's obvious.
Second, Marika.
All right, so Danielle motion to make subject a mandatory element, and Marika seconded. I will give a second for any questions or clarifications. Okay. So the vote in front of you is for making subject mandatory. All right. 22 votes already, so closing it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, we have 24 votes this time, 21 affirmative, 3 abstain, and 0 negative. As such, the motion passes. Hand it back to Celeste and Corey.
Great. Moving right along. Identifier, we propose to keep it optional as must support. I know this kind of came up earlier.
Some of the rationale here that we talked about last time is not all vendors are supporting the identifier element. And some of the reasoning was that you may not have like the original identifier for it if you're not the one that actually performed it and resulted it. So if you still want to say like I ingested this into my system, I want to be able to report on it. I don't have an original identifier, but I have this like fire resource identifier for it. That's what we're allowing for here, but saying that must support like you shall populate it if you know it.
So given that local order identifier is one of the allowed identifiers, I think most lab systems would have it. What I'm worried about maybe are the diagnostic reports versus the pathology and imaging reports. So that is my big question, and I don't have enough experience to say otherwise, but I'm thinking that it may not be as well organized as it is for labs.
I think that, sorry, speaking from a lab and imaging perspective, I think those 3 would cover everything, particularly report identifier. Everybody has a report identifier. They do it now in V2.
So what about ECGs and those sorts of things?
They would have an accession number.
Right.
It's also, go ahead, Brett.
Oh, yeah, I get, like, I think in Australia it's pretty much standard to have one. I think I'd rather go for one to many and DAR it if you can't supply it, because that's the exception case.
I would agree with Brett. My follow-up question is there any report that we ever seen that comes out without an identifier? I can't remember that I've seen one, but I might be wrong.
So it's Angus here. So at least in the diagnostic space, to give me a report without identifier is really bad, because if you ever give me an update to that report, I don't know what you're updating. Like I now just have 2 instances of a report. So I hear that, there's probably a use case to not have a report identifier. It's pretty dangerous to not have one. How do you know what it is going forward? How do you know whether it's been updated or not? I'm not going to push that it must have one, but certainly if you're a radiology or a pathology company out putting reports, you would absolutely put a report identifier on them. Otherwise, you can't track updating of those reports, or what report was it?
And I totally agree, Angus.
I agree with that as well, but I'm still worried about, I don't know how to describe these, the non-lab ones, like audiology reports and the like. Like
ECG or something.
I mean, I get the accession number with the ECG.
No, you get it for ECGs.
But
I mean,
what
you still
about
get a number.
But what about audiology reports, or some of those other?
But I mean, Heath, in those cases, and pausing my chair hat for a second, in those cases, that's a must support. You don't have them, that's fine, because it's must support send if known. The cardinality is still 0.
But we're proposing that it's 1. That's what I'm hearing everyone like Angus and Brett and the like are actually proposing that it should be a minimum cardinality of 1. I agree that I think we should keep it 0. Must support means give it if you've got one. And I just think because this is including all those other types of diagnostic reports, not just lab ones, and imaging ones and ones that have accession numbers, that we probably need to be careful.
So
legitimately, this will not stand in an ecosystem. We might be able to do it now, but we will be migrating to mandatory. We have to if you're doing record locator stuff, because you're matching, like what Angus is saying. You have to be able to match what you've previously sent to do this kind of work. I could not imagine. But I would like to hear, I guess, from Corey and sorry, is it Celeste?
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that you might be receiving or generating where you aren't able to know an identifier, because it's a use case I'm unfamiliar with, so I would like to know about it.
Yeah, I think not to redirect your redirection, but is there anyone from MediRecords or Best Practice that is on here? They're the ones that responded to the vendor survey as like not being able to support these. Like, is there anyone that would be able to speak to that?
I can speak to best practice. I think we currently don't populate it, but I think we should be. I just don't know where it gets imported into when we generate this.
How do you know about updates, Landon? So if they give you a correction to a result, how do you know that corrects the result?
Oh, well, at the moment, we're sort of just consuming it internally. We're not exchanging it externally. That's why we haven't.
But even when you present it to the doctor, here's the report. Here's some other report. They look similar. Oh, hang on, that's an update to this report. Like, how do you know that if you don't have an identifier?
I agree. We'll dig into it more. I'm sure we are required to map it. I haven't seen it. It's just I need to do more investigation. I agree, though.
Landon,
There may be a situation where some of the new point of care tests, which are conducted often by people who are in for example, remote and rural. So you get point of care ultrasound, point of care ECG, longitudinal ECG, point of care path, all those sorts of things are candidates for that. I don't know exactly whether they do or don't produce identifiers today, but a lot of that, which is now going into the clinic that can be performed there, may be a question in this space.
I can also see it in sort of scanning stuff. Like I received a pathology report as a PDF. I'm going to scan it into a system, store it as a diagnostic report in the presented form. And no, I don't really know the report identifier. I just got this piece of paper in my hand and I wanted to put it into my system.
Exactly. That's exactly the MediRecords example.
Recognize we have 3 hands up, and to keep us moving on time, we'll go to Brett, Michael, and Marika.
Yeah, Angus triggered me slightly, and I'm going to disagree with myself. We're wandering off into diagnostic report workflow, and I'm not sure that's what AU Core is for. Right. If we're going to do diagnostic report workflow, we need to have a spec that covers the whole workflow and what the requirements are. And I kind of think this is on the borderline. This is on the borderline of yeah. Can you share this stuff effectively without an identifier? And the answer is probably yes. The clinical info is there.
Yeah, and
is that an imperative to share this information in a summary or something like that?
And the MediRecords example is where they're receiving messages, they're inputting it into their system, and then on sharing it again to their partners, and because they're not actually extracting it, and as I said, the scanning situation where it's just being attached as a PDF, etc., there is no identifier that's being entered in manually associated with it. for the purposes of on sharing. So that's the example.
Yeah. So I think I'm going backwards and going, it should just be must support.
I support that.
Native known. Yeah. And still and zero.
I do too, Brett, and maybe I should have talked earlier. Like I've spoken to Corey about what we're doing here, and to me this, because we're also in e-requesting, which we may be renaming ourselves to requesting and reporting. We're also starting to look at resulting, but I see this as the base level work that we would inherit on top of. So I can see this being more open. Maybe when we get to our work, we close it down more.
Yeah, because you'll include the matching as part of your use case, right? And you'll need it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Is there any motions on the floor?
Can I just make one more comment about, and I don't want to go into the depths of it, but of the type of it. So we've got 3 types of identifiers here: local, AU local report, AU local order, AU session number. I've got big issues with these types. They crisscross each other. They're not clear, but that's not for now.
Okay.
Okay, part of that is fix the workflow. Because this is just an interoperability. I agree. It's a smishmash. But that's kind of like reflecting current state. Default to share, like that requires for sharing reports with the My Health record that you shall share what is the order identifier. So that's a requirement. It's mandatory. So
But will the My Health record not have a separate profile, most likely on top of
they'd
this?
have their own. Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. So I guess where I'm going is I am if there's a motion to approve 0 to many, I will vote affirmative. But yeah.
Yeah. And I appreciate Angus bringing this up, but that is what we're trying to get to, is like, what is the thing that everything else can be built on top of for diagnostic report? Because there will be My Health record use cases, there'll be imaging use cases, there'll be laboratory use cases. But yeah, this covers a lot more than that.
And if known, it's going to be populated, right? And so most of the time it's going to be there.
I'll motion that we accept 0 to many must support.
Okay, thank you, Heath, for motioning, accepting 0 to many and must support. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Michael Osborne.
Thank you, Michael. I will launch the poll. If there's any other questions or clarifications, please share them now. Okay. All right, this vote is for adding 0 to many and must support for identifier. We're at 25 votes already, so I'm going to close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we are at 22 of 26 affirmative, 0 out of 26 negative, and 4 out of 26 abstain. So the motion passes. Corey, I'm going to give you a quick time check. You have about 7 minutes left on your section, so go ahead.
Celeste, do you want to move forward? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't remember off the top of my head which one this was. We might try.
Could I even just jump to a motion?
Please.
Because I mean, I don't know how much we need to talk about this because we've talked about category and AU core. I would be happy, given the time constraints, to just flat motion this unless people want to talk about it.
Oh. Is that a motion, Danielle, or?
Yeah, okay. I motion that AU core diagnostic report has a category cardinality of 1 to many.
Okay.
A second.
Corey, you second?
Yep.
So there's a motion to make category 1 to many and must support. And Corey seconds. Is there any clarifying questions or points? Heath, go ahead.
I'd be interested in the 3 of 5. And probably for the same very reason I was talking about earlier, that when we're scanning in documents and exposing those as a diagnostic report.
Yeah, it's the same too.
Yeah, I back down on identifier and I won't on category. but let's see what Brett has to say.
That value set is pathology, right?
No,
It's
it's
not
imaging
what's
as
the
well.
subject
It's
under
imaging
vote,
as well.
though.
Yeah, it's imaging as well.
That's right. I'm just checking scope.
I
And
think
it's
you can
preferred.
include things like audiology and all those sorts of things. So
100%.
Yeah,
can,
cool.
yes.
Yeah, cool.
And it says
No, that's
and
good.
it says
I'm happy.
preferred. You don't have to use one of those codes.
yeah, but you
Yeah,
have to
that's good.
provide a code is what
What
we're
we're
proposing.
saying is if you share a diagnostic report, you have to categorize it in some way so that the
That's
consuming
fine.
system
Yeah,
has some means of being able to know what that is.
yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm looking at it. That's good.
Okay. I
So
am
if
going
we don't
to.
require identify as I 1.1, then why category? Why is category so important? If we're talking about sharing, you need to have the identifier to share. And if you're not talking about sharing, you want to categorize the report,
But
then
Because
you want the category to be one star. Then why not identify? I
because
can't.
because because
Yeah,
you
go for
I'm
it.
can't
gonna
make
I'm gonna stop that actually, Stephen, because I think that argument is non sequitur and would be better applied against the identifier argument as opposed for this motion.
because the person scanning the report can't make up the identifier, but they can look at the report and categorize it.
Okay.
it's also you can't display them in groups, right? Which is the main thing, right? We can't group them properly.
Okay. Moving to vote, and Stephen, if you want to bring that back up on the identifier conversation, we can, and there can be a future
I mean,
motion.
while we're voting, I'm also happy to respond to Stephen. There's identifiers address instance level kind of use cases. Categories are more around like generic workflows and the ability to search things and the ability to filter something into the right kind of like consumption workflow because you know it's pathology. So every radiology report will have a category of radiology. Every lab report will have something for pathology. Then we'll have things for others. It is an essential part of doing kind of the digital health. So category and identifier, I think, do two different things.
Okay. Thank you, Danielle. We have 19 votes, a little lower than earlier, so we're going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we are at 23 total votes, 17 affirmative, 6 abstain, and 0 negative. As such, the vote for making the category a cardinality of one to many and must support passes.
Excellent.
I'm gonna move us ahead to just like introducing some upcoming topics. I don't know because I don't know how much time we have to vote on these things. Some of the constraints around Angus, your question earlier about effective and issued. I wanted these to be mandatory for certain statuses. So that's why they're a bit like finicky when we're talking about those. And then so those will be the discussions that we need to have next time. And then it's also code binding is a really important one. And I think this one's going to be really hard. I'm proposing LOINC. This kind of matches IPS as the like base level. What are you supporting for a diagnostic report? And I think that should work as like the baseline. I can see the current AU base is SNOMED though. And so if there's a decision that like the baseline should be SNOMED, that will be a decision that we have to go through. I think that there are specific use cases where it could be SNOMED, maybe for radiology and things like that, but I thought that the base should be LOINC. And that will be just introducing that right now. I'm sure that there will be a lot of discussion about that one. And then if you move on to the grouping guidance, there's currently grouping guidance for observations for how you are grouping observations. And I wanted to bring up a future proposal for grouping guidance around how we should be grouping these for diagnostic reports, how you're grouping your observations underneath it. And so that was another tougher topic that we were going to bring up. Daniel.
So we've got a number of future topics, and I guess probably one of the things to determine is there's another information session Which of these topics do you want to focus on in that one?
Would people like us to focus on? I think I can focus on, I think the one that I would most like to focus on, I think, is grouping guidance. But if there are folks that want to focus on something around the DiagnosticReport.code, I would also be open to that.
I don't agree with your statements about code, but I think code's easier to work through than the grouping one. I think you and I align on the grouping one, but the code one, I don't agree with it being low ink, but I think it's an easier one to work through.
Yeah, I don't feel super strongly about it. A lot of it is lining up with IPS, but yeah, totally. I'm fine being. I think that's an easier decision to make. So the grouping might require more.
I think the grouping's far harder to get everyone across.
Yeah.
Thank you, Angus. We're going to be at time for this topic. So Brett and then Heath, and then we'll move into Heath's topic.
Yeah, so my understanding was that College of Pathologists had a position on this, and also Ranska, right? They have different positions as well. I think College of Pathology, I think, is recommending SNOMED, and Ranska, I think, is LOINC typically. But
sort of keep under advisement and.
But Angus would know better, and probably Mike Osborne.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to research or make sure we have representatives on the call for when we discuss that coding. Heath.
Have we got a full set of must support proposed must support elements? And
yep, I think this
for
is
me,
good.
We should be
check the confluence for this, and we will add a link to that in the meeting notes for review ahead of time too.
Yeah, I think we just need to focus on those in the next information session if we are still questionable. And I somewhat think this grouping might be in that same conversation somewhat. I think we could go without necessarily go down the bindings direction and still have a profile proposed for R7 without going down the rabbit hole of bindings for that particular element in particular. I would like to actually have a look at the bindings for category though, because I think that one, I'm actually more concerned about the previous vote without the knowledge of what category codes I actually need to adhere to.
Would defer you to the AE-based binding that's currently in place. With that, just to summarize, Corey, I think for the next information session, focusing on the grouping and additional must support elements that might be discussed that will be discussed in the next session. And then for the next meeting, bring up the code there.
Yeah, because I don't think the profile's ready at the moment. Like the 4 that we've got, that's not sufficient for an implementable profile.
Yep. Okay. Heath, you have about 5 to 7 minutes for your final topic. I guess take 10. I just have a couple business as usuals at the end.
All right, let's see what we can do. Okay, AE core document reference profile. First time this is being presented at the working group. We've had 3 sessions so far, information sessions. Oh, I'm not sharing it, am I? Got 3 information sessions so far. There is a page about the information session, also has the proposal as it currently stands, which keeps getting updated after each information session. There's also a separate vendor support page that we're starting to get some pretty good responses on. So encourage those that haven't filled it out, please go there. Another information session tomorrow where we're going to talk about value set bindings for category and type. And also search parameters so that we can finalize the capability statement proposals in a future scenario. This may be as far as we get in the time that we've got, but basically this is a scope and usage statement around the document reference profile. Again, we're talking about minimum set of expectations. There's slightly different actions associated with this. We're talking about indexing, storing, discovering, and access of various formatted digital health documents. And what I guess various formatted, as in it also includes things like PDFs, not just composition documents, etc. Again, it's for a subject of care. I won't go too much into the depths of the next bit, but you can see from the information session the sorts of use cases people are wanting to use document reference for, including discharge summaries, clinical notes. There's certainly patient summaries in there, handover notes, etc. Talking about systems that are implementing it in there, we've actually got about 3. I think a previous session indicated 4, and there's a few that are intending to do so. So I guess as an initial motion, I would like to motion that this is the in principle scope and usage of a AU Core document reference profile. Any questions before we ask for a seconder? No.
Doesn't look like it. Do we have a second to Heath's motion to accept this as the profile scope and usage for document reference?
No one wants document reference in AU Core?
No, I think maybe we're all like, this is quite specific, and I think we've got some hidden sneaky normative parts that I don't know that everybody understands the implications of. I don't have a problem with it so far. Yeah.
Do we not want to vote at this point on at least a scope and move forward to see at least socialize the elements that I'm proposing as must support?
Because I guess my question is, by voting on this, we're fixing the subject reference to patient, right? Basically. So I think there's a bit of normative here.
To some extent, but it's about scope. What we're really doing is what's the scope of this profile and what's the purpose.
Yeah.
So that way, by agreeing that this is the purpose, we then have easier conversations when we start to talk about some of the elements, such as subject and its target reference types.
Look, I'll second it. I mean, we have means, we have a number of means in which to review this if it turns out not to be appropriate. At this point in time, I think this is a good basis to start from for R1 of this profile. Sorry, R1 of this profile, so R3 obviously of AU Core. So I'm happy to second the motion.
I mean, I would just say that we've had 3 sessions on this where this scope has been the working principles that we've been working to, and many of those peoples on those sessions are on this call.
So acknowledge that, Heath, there is a second to your motion. So I don't know if you want to, I'm assuming your motion still stands and Danielle is seconding, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion and before us is accepting this as the profile scope and usage for document reference. Any final clarifying questions before we vote?
I'll just clarify what the motion is. In principle, it's not necessarily word by word. We'll leave the editorial to the editorial team, but in principle, this is what we're agreeing to as the scope.
Okay, the motion in principle that this is the scope and usage for document reference. Okay, I don't see any hands, so I will launch the poll. got 20 votes pretty quickly, so I will close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we have 26 votes, 20 affirmative, 6 abstain, and 0 negative. The vote passes. Heath, I don't know if you have anything you want to cram into a couple minutes really quick.
I don't know if we'll get to a vote, but it's probably worth spending a couple of minutes if it's okay.
I just
If
need
that's all you need to wrap
at
up.
the end, so I will
Yeah.
cut you when I cut you.
All right, so basically, as a summary of what the proposed must support elements are, we have identifier as 0 to many must support, status of 1 to many must support, type 1 to 1 must support, which is constrained from what the base is. 0 to 1 category is 0 to many must support. Subject is constrained to 1 to 1 must support with a reference of AU core patient. And a date of that is still optional must support, and author that is optional must support with AU core targets except for device, which we don't have an AU core profile for. Content is mandatory as defined by the resource type, as is attachment. The attachment element is of type attachment, which has a optional content type of 0 to 1, but it's been proposed that that will be a mandatory 1 to 1 must support. Data and URL are the options on how to carry, either encoded within the resource or referenced externally. So it's a choice. They both must support, and then the only context element that we're looking to include is the period, which is the time of service that is being documented, but that's optional. Any discussion or questions around that proposal? Any other elements that maybe people would suggest that need to be included? And we're in the last minute before I need to hand back.
I mean, we're in the last minute, so I think we could actually vote on must support for a bunch of this. I mean, we're almost not changing cardinality. There's only like a couple of things that cardinality's changed on.
Type,
Majority of this
subject,
is must support.
and content type. Yeah.
Yeah. So
is there a proposal or a motion?
So I'm hearing that there's a motion for a suggestion of a motion for basically cardinality only. Is that right, Danielle? What are you suggesting?
I was thinking must support, but we could do cardinality only. We could do. I don't think it matters, but we should split it up.
You think that it should be split up?
Oh, fine. Put it to the group, because as you've said, we've now had 3 information sessions on exactly this slide, and the feedback is already incorporated. So that, I guess that's the question to the group. Are we happy with this? Is there any other change?
I was actually going to do it as a whole bulk, to be honest, but
Sure, go for it.
So we're getting close to time, so if there's a motion, please state the motion.
So my motion is to accept as displayed on the screen these elements as must support. The type, subject, and content type are mandatory, with the reference types here to AU core profiles, and also use the default AU core obligations, populate if known and no error.
Marika, you have your hand raised?
I'm so sorry, Heath. I just caught it. The content type being elevated to 1 to 1. We have a really weird use case where a content type lives in a different place, and it's a little bit challenging to actually populate content type. I think when I entered our use case in your table in Confluence, we indicated that we couldn't actually populate content type. So I'm concerned that it's 1 to 1, but I agree with must support in principle.
I'm happy to take the friendly amendment to reduce it to 0 to, leave it unconstrained, 0 to 1.
Great.
So there is a motion to accept the must support and constraints on the elements on screen with a friendly amendment to remove the cardinality constraint on content type. Do I have a second for the motion?
I'll second it, Jai.
Thank you, Jai. Jai seconds. So any remaining clarifications or questions? Otherwise, I will launch the poll. Okay. So this is for the current motion of accepting the must support elements and constraints with the friendly amendment of content type not being constrained. We are at 20 votes, so I'm going to close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have 22 total votes, 15 affirmative, 7 abstain, and 0 negative. As such, the motion passes. With that, Heath, I'm going to take back the screen and close off the meeting. So just to wrap up, thank you everyone today for voting on these motions. Just a reminder that there's another information session coming up where we'll discuss document reference part 4 tomorrow, May 1st. There is a additional diagnostic report information session, part 2 on the 8th, where we'll cover the additional must supports as well as some grouping clarifications. Then the next core work group call will be 2 weeks from now on the 14th of May, where we will be continuing to visit the document reference, diagnostic report, and touch on organization identifier. And then finally, there is co-design workshop in the end of May and a medication dispense information session coming up towards the end of May. Just a reminder that the next call is the 14th of May at 11 a.m. and these are the things we're covering. Thank you all for joining us today and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
That's right. That's good.
I will
You did
talk to you
great.
later.
You haven't done it in forever, but it went really
excellent
well.
job.
It
It did very well.
it definitely did.
That was good.
I think I definitely